Dear colleagues, I call this meeting to order. Bienvenue à la réunion.
Welcome to meeting 7 of the Standing Committee on Science and Research.
As you all know, the Board of Internal Economy requires that committees adhere to health protocols, which are in effect until March 11th of 2022. As chair, I will enforce these measures, and as always, I thank you all for your cooperation. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the order of November 24th, 2021. I'd like to outline a few rules to follow. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You may speak in the official language of your choice, and at the bottom of your screen, you may choose to hear floor audio or in English or French. The raise hand feature is on the main toolbar should you wish to speak. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. When you are not speaking, your microphone should be muted. And the committee clerk and I will maintain a speaking list for all members. Dear colleagues, we have 2 panels tonight, and we're delighted to welcome our witnesses for the first panel. From Niagara College, we have Dr. Marc Nantel, Vice President, Research and External Relations. Welcome, Dr. Nantel. From the University du Québec en Outaouais, we have Dr. Adel El-Zaïm, Vice President, Research, Creation, Partnership, and Internationalization. And from the University of Saskatchewan, we have Dr. Baljit Singh, Vice President, Research. We welcome you all. We're grateful for your time. We will begin, we'll have statements from each for 5 minutes. I will hold up a yellow card when you have 30 seconds left. And we'll begin with Dr. Nantel for 5 minutes. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me the opportunity to speak today and for the committee service to the Canadian people. It's nice to see you again, some of you, including you, Madam Chair. My name is Marc Nantel, and as said, I'm the VP of Research and External Relations at Niagara College. I'm also the chair of the National Research and Advisory Council of Colleges and Institute Canada. And I have experience in research at both university and college levels. I have a PhD in plasma physics from 1994, then went to France and the University of Michigan, where I work with Gérard Mourou, who was fortunate enough to have the Nobel Prize given to him with our friend Donna Strickland a couple of years ago. And then I spent 10 years from 98 to 08 at the University of Toronto as an adjunct professor. Been at the college since 2011. So I'd like to talk quickly about some of the success I see from the funding program point of view. When I got my PhD in 1994, research funding in Canada was at a low ebb, so I had to go away. But when I saw in 1997 that the government of Canada created the Canada Foundation for Innovation, the CFI, and the Canada Research Chairs, I knew that it was time to come back because Canada was getting serious again about research. And when I did come back from Michigan, my first grant that I received was from the CFI for the establishment of the University of Toronto's laser micro machining facility. And the equipment is still in use today. So I'm quite happy with that. I consider these 2 programs to be great successes, the CFI and the CRC. They brought back Canadian scientists to Canada and recruited international stars. I think they're doing what they're supposed to do. Another program that is dear to me is NSERC's College and Community Innovation Program. Niagara College was one of the 6 colleges across Canada to help NSERC conduct this pilot for the program in 2006 to 09. And the success of the pilot led to the continuing CCI program funding that NSERC runs for the Tri-Council. And the annual budget is $85 million a year. This amount represents only about 2% and change of the total Tri-Council support for post-secondary research, with the rest, 97% plus, going to universities. I consider nonetheless this program to be a resounding success. Through NSERC's CCI program, the power of community colleges to contribute to research was unleashed, albeit only partially. We'd need several times the current budget to fully realize it. A challenge that we hear a lot of in the press these days, and for a while, has been that Canada does well at basic research and publishing results, but not so well at reaping the benefit of our intellectual property for Canadians. Now, I don't purport to have solutions for how universities are going to tackle that, but let me tell you how colleges try to contribute. College research, complementary to universities, is often about the application of knowledge to solve more immediate problems, about the companies, mostly SMEs, small and medium enterprise, that approach us for help. It's about developing new products, processes, and services for them. It's about transferring these solutions and new commercializable results directly to industry, and about giving college students a richer education through these applied research projects so that they can be a better workforce. Our timelines for these projects are therefore shorter, a few months to a year, as is the timeline for commercialization, because the IP is generally given straight up to the industry partner who can get on right away with commercializing it. It's more of a market pull situation than technology push. So the colleges are trying to help. All the government and big science eventually needs to hit the ground. And often at that point, colleges are involved in taking the concepts and prototypes that you make and bring them to real life with the companies that are going to put them on the market. Big science needs applied research to be successful in reaching its commercialization end goals. College campuses are situated within 50 kilometers of 95% of the Canadian population and 86% of the Indigenous population of Canada. We have 140 colleges across Canada, including more than 750 labs and research centers. In 2019 and 20, they worked on more than 6,400 applied research projects, yielding more than 5,500 prototypes, processes, products, and services. 85% of these realized within 1 year. Along the way, 42,000 students worked on the projects and got an enhanced education that allowed them to be innovative for the employer who will hire them. Colleges work with SMEs, and the results and commercialization of the research leads these companies to be competitive on the market domestically and internationally, and to create jobs in all sectors of the economy. Because most of the companies with which we work are small, medium enterprises and not multinational corporations, the results benefit straight in Canada. At Niagara College, we focus, for example, our applied research on advanced manufacturing, agriculture and environment, food and beverage, and business and commercialization research. Other sectors covered by other colleges include ICT, health, energy, and anything you'd like. That's why I'd like to end my introductory remark by asking that the committee considers the place that college applied research can play in the overall research landscape in Canada and the economic development, job creation, and wealth generation that it can bring. We can contribute so much more with better than 2% of the federal dollars going to all post-secondary
Dr.
research
Nantel, I'm sorry to interrupt. I know people will be really interested in what you have to say and will want to follow up. Thank you so much.
I couldn't see your sign, Madam Chair, because I was reading my text. I apologize.
Thank you so much. I know people are really looking forward to talking with you. If we could now go to Dr. Adel El-Zaim, and I hope I've pronounced your name correctly, and it'll be for 5 minutes. We look forward to hearing from you.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. You pronounced my name correctly indeed. I'd like to thank you for the invitation to present before your committee and to wish you success with your mandate. On the part of the Université du Québec in Outaouais, I'd like to ensure you that we intend to support you. My remarks will be focused on the challenges of science and research. We know that Canada already has a lot of success stories in science and in top quality research, which deserves to be celebrated. The Université of Québec in Outaouais is a burgeoning university with some 6,000 students at its 3 sites in Gatineau, Ripon and Saint-Jérôme. Our mission focuses on regional development, and we enjoy tremendous international diversity on our faculty, among our staff, and in our student body. Our researchers very often tackle real-life, multi-sectoral issues that require a multidisciplinary approach. Forestry science, education, computer science, and so on and so forth. The COVID-19 pandemic has been and continues to be an enormous challenge to all our systems across Canada and the world. It has also presented a golden opportunity for transformation, one that must not be passed up on, I might add. The global public health crisis has forced us to become more nimble, flexible and responsive. Research councils of Canada have targeted funding to find quick solutions. Researchers from around the world worked together and built on knowledge faster than ever before and were able to quickly turn it into solutions such as vaccines, experimental treatments and epidemiology. We've also seen new innovations in other areas such as transportation logistics, distance education, telemedicine, the development of technological solutions for service delivery and also cybersecurity, or information and data security, an area of excellence at the Université du Québec en Outaouais. Canada will now have to learn from what has been developed, but also identify what is missing and what the crisis has revealed as needs and gaps to address. We will need to change and become a proactive rather than a reactive world, anticipate the future and most especially innovate. The challenges faced by science and scientific research community in Canada stem from the nature of the problems and issues facing humanity and Canada. International research partnerships come with their own perils and pitfalls. Global challenges such as climate change or public health crisis will increasingly require ongoing international partnership work. We must foster collaborations with countries that share our values of democracy and openness to the world. International partnership increases our research capacity. Strengthening Canada's research, institutions and research management systems becomes a fundamental and vital issue for sustaining Canadian successes and for ensuring their positive impact on Canada and the world. Multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary research is the solution. In addition to developing fundamental knowledge, research in the 21st century must reflect complex challenges and be more multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary than ever before. Some of the programs led by Canada's research councils promote this approach. We need to build on this and train more researchers in multidisciplinary approaches. We also need to recognise this kind of training and expertise in the careers of researchers in order to maximise the potential of young scientists. It is no exaggeration to say that one of the dangers of modern democratic society today is the lack of a scientific and research culture. Our educational system aspires to develop critical thinking in our youth. However, we have a generation that does not know how to differentiate between personal opinion, public opinion, and proven scientific fact. A culture of research must therefore be fostered in young people of school age and constitute a critical aspect of their upbringing and development, along with general culture, whether they go on to university or not. We understand the need for high-quality standards in the management of research and its impacts. Our research institutions and centres are working hard to meet the requirements of funders. However, even larger universities struggle under the weight of reporting requirements, compliance management and adherence to requirements. Canada could simplify procedures or, alternatively, channel more resources into helping universities that do not have the money required for compliance and sometimes find themselves unable to apply for grants because of the lack of administrative capacity. Thus, a lot of young research talent is left without support and see their professional development hampered as a result. In terms of opportunities, Canada has many friends in the world. We export knowledge and know-how. We also import more of it and thus ensure more sustainable development of science and research skills. The pandemic has shown us the benefits, but also the limitations of our globally interconnected society. Finally, Madam Chairperson, let me remind you of the following notions.
Dr. Zaim, je regrette.
I'm sorry, Doctor. I'm sorry to cut you off. Thank you very much for your opening remarks.
I know our colleagues are eagerly await to talk to you. And now if we could go to Dr. Singh for 5 minutes. Thank you all so much. Dr. Singh, you're muted. You could start again and welcome Dr. Singh.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for this privilege to be in front of the Standing Committee on Science and Research. My name is Baljit Singh. I am Vice President Research and Professor of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Saskatchewan, which is located on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of Métis people. This university is a proud member of U15 group of Canadian research intensive medical doctoral universities and enrolls more than 20,000 students, including 4,000 graduate students from 130 countries. We are proud to say that 15% of the student body, that's about 3,500 students, are self-declared Indigenous students. That percentage is equal to the percentage of Indigenous peoples in the province of Saskatchewan. Canadian government has proudly made significant investment over decades in basic and applied research that has led to the current levels of prosperity that we enjoy every day. Today, Madam Chair, I would like to make 4 specific points for consideration by this committee. I hope some of those are fresh points and some support, but has already been presented to the committee. Number 1, research facilities. Canada has done a commendable job in investing to create unique and world-class research facilities in this country. There are 17 national research facilities, and we are proud to have 3 of those at the University of Saskatchewan. Because we operate those, we also have experience about the challenges of finding funding to operate those facilities in an adequate and optimal manner. Therefore, I would request the committee to consider a national conversation to create an alternative funding model for large national research science facilities that consider the full life cycle of the facility from the first brick to the finish of the facility. The second point, Madam Chair, I would like to make is about work with the Indigenous communities. As part of the national work, the universities have developed significant better ways of working in a respectful manner with the Indigenous communities and their leaders to undertake the research in partnership with the communities into challenges which are directly confronted by our Indigenous peoples. The road is long, there are still challenges, but I also see there are massive opportunities in front of us if we can do the work right. I would request the committee to consider creating a better funding model that galvanizes the partnerships between the universities and the Indigenous communities to create a better and prosperous way of life for our Indigenous peoples in Canada. The third point, Madam Chair, I would make is One Health. Over the last couple of years, we have seen what a fast-moving and complex threat, such as a COVID-19, can do to expose the gaps in our knowledge and abilities and public policies to tackle that problem, which emerges at the intersections of the animal health, human health, and the environmental health. We don't have to react in a similar way in the future challenges. There is a better way. It's called One Health. One Health examines deeper connections between the animal, human, and the animal health, and it leads to the creation of a better public policy framework. University of Saskatchewan is engaged with other universities and some federal departments in advancing the concept of One Health to protect the health of the Canadians, their animals, and their environment when a future outbreak takes place in this country. Therefore, I would recommend leadership from the federal government to allow us to coalesce the existing abilities in the area of One Health to create a legacy program for the Canadians to protect their health. The last point, Madam Chair, I would make is about better funding in the area of social sciences, humanities, and the arts. I think the COVID pandemic has shown us the epidemic of the mental health in our country. And also, we don't have a better ways of building cohesive, resilient, and multicultural communities in our country. Therefore, a better investment into social sciences and humanities will allow us to do that. And also a better way of expressing ourselves culturally and in a different ways of artistic expressions will allow us to create wellness in our country. With these comments, Madam Chair, I again am very grateful for the opportunity to be in front of this committee, and thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dr. Singh, for your comments. And again, I'd like to welcome all 3 witnesses. You have a committee that's really interested in the work you're presenting and is eager to learn more. So we thank you. And with that, we will now go to our first round of questions. This is a 6-minute round, and we will begin with Mr. Baldinelli. Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank all the witnesses for being here this evening and for their insightful presentations. I want to begin with my questions to Mr. Nantel from Niagara College. In a previous session of one of our hearings, one of our witnesses, Mr. Kenyon from Brock University, during his presentation, he talked about the power of smaller research institutions, and he talked how smaller institutions can play a larger role in the cultural and economic activity of its communities. And I really felt that sentence and that line really kind of defined perfectly what it is Niagara College is doing and has been doing for the past several years. And as you mentioned in your presentation about the notion of applied research and working with industries, and you're working in terms of months, not several years. And several of the projects in your innovation centers, be it the Walker Advanced Manufacturing Innovation Center, the Canadian Food and Wine Institute, the Innovation Center there, Agricultural and Environmental Technologies. So my question to you is, I was wondering if you could give us some examples of the projects, the applied research projects that have made a real difference to Canadian companies, and primarily those in our local communities.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, Mr. Bonanelli. Yes, I can give you examples from each of our innovation centers. From the Walker Advanced Manufacturing Innovation Center, we are leading a 9-institution network called the Southern Ontario Network for Advanced Manufacturing Innovation. And it's funded through the FedDev Ontario, the Regional Development Agency for Southern Ontario. And it is tackling a whole bunch of problems to do. We can go from auto safety to better ways of drilling holes. I mean, it goes the gamut. It's got McMaster University involved and 7 colleges, including Niagara College. And one way of relating this to the committee's question today is that when COVID struck in March 2020, we, the members of Tsunami, went to our funders and said, hey, could we pivot our funding to look at COVID-19 related projects? And FedDev was very gracious in saying, yes, please do. We need the help. There's a problem with PPEs, personal protective equipment. There's a problem with fluids for cleaning. Is any old problem that you could help would be great. And so for the first 6 or 8 months of the pandemic, we conducted 32 projects that are COVID related. They were manufacturing and designing face shields. They were using our distilleries to make cleaning fluids. They were designing and building better laryngoscopes in order to intubate people more safely. They were apps for phone to facilitate distancing. Physical distancing during delivery. And all of the companies with which we've worked were able to step up into the breach during the early part of Tsunami. So that's one way in which we help in a very local way, but that can have far-reaching implications. We worked with manufacturing companies. We doubled the production of a machine shop in Niagara that used to do mostly car parts, but is now pivoting to do horticultural products, handling machinery. If you have your little alfalfa sprout that you grow, well, these have to be processed, they have to be cut, they have to be cleaned, they have to be dried, they have to be bagged. And this company now produces machinery that does this, sells worldwide, and within a few months of having finished their project with us, the Tsunami project with us, they were doubling their machining space, they were doubling their staff, and they were selling millions of dollars around the world. That's one example. Another is that we've helped companies make new beverages. There's a company called Distilex that makes 0% alcohol gin. And we designed with them the product. We're currently working on a tequila with them too. And now their product's on the market. And in December, if you were watching Dragon's Den, you would have seen them on Dragon's Den pitching their Zero Gin product. And they got offers from each and every dragon. So they are currently commercializing this product with the help from investors and being very successful and still working with us on their second product with us. So those are 2 or 3 examples. I can give more, but I don't want to take the whole time.
Well, no, thank you. And if you'd like to share some more details, I mean, I'm sure the committee would like in a written format. We could take those. But I'd like to put a question to all the witnesses. And again, thank you for being here. Over previous meetings, we've heard from a number of witnesses talking about the importance of the ecosystem, the foundation, as being critical to science and research innovation. We've also heard about the needs for greater harmonization, collaboration, coordination. You know, that notion, I mean, we've heard from one witness as well about the notion almost of a one-stop shop to try to make it easier for the institutions. So from your perspective, what can the federal government do to reduce, you know, the challenges and some of the barriers that you may be facing, not only as a college, but a university, in trying to secure those grants and that to support that critical work that you're doing? Mr. Nantel, I'll start with you, and then we'll go to the other witnesses real quick.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity, and through the chair, MP Baldinelli. As a college, it's actually not that easy to secure the funding to keep us going. Not because of the 2% number that I mentioned in my address, but also colleges are really don't. Faculty at a college is not hired to do research. They're hired to teach and do a bit of admin, unlike a university professor, which has research as his or her function along with teaching and admin. And so it comes to the Office of Research to lead the way. We write the proposals, we make the connection with industry, we respond to industry, and these offices are not particularly well supported.
Dr. Nantel. Dr. Nantel, Mr. Baldinelli, I'm sorry. It was so interesting to hear about the work that was being done. I apologize.
No, thank you.
And I'm afraid we're going to have to go on. Monsieur Lauzon, 6 minutes to you, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Merci beaucoup, témoins, Dr. Nantel.
Thank you very much, witnesses. Dr. Nantel, Dr. Elzeem, and Dr. Singh, it's a great opportunity to have you with us. I imagine that Dr. Nantel is also a francophone, given your name, sir. But nevertheless, I'll give Dr. Zaim the opportunity to present his recommendations that we missed out on at the end of his text. So, Mr. Zaim, if you'd like to recap on those, please. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, and thank you to the members of the committee for giving me this opportunity. Indeed, the recommendations focused on how important it is for us in Canada as a leading country in the world to develop culture and a taste for research among youth from an early age. It's not just a question of science. It's a question of society, i.e. cultivating a taste for science and research. Our second recommendation is to remember that we cannot get through this alone. We need domestic and international partners. Sometimes they are risky, but we need them. We also recommend that researchers be assisted with their work, that procedures be simplified so that we can see the emergence of new talent, new blood, so that they're not drowned out or inundated by red tape and paperwork. That will facilitate our work. The paperwork right now is too cumbersome. Now, in the interconnected world in which we live, we have seen what the limitations are, and we need Canada to take stock of those limitations, but to assume a leadership role in science, in research, and in innovation. You know, there's the example of semiconductors, which is ripe for the picking. Some countries, Asian countries, are already there. but there is even greater potential for innovation through research in them, and Canada can play a major role in innovation with semiconductors, computer science innovations, phonetics, physics, and quantum computing. Well, thank you very much for the tail end of your presentation that you essentially just read out to us. Now, we've had the opportunity of having Mr. Gilles Patry appear before us before, and you know him. And he said in his testimony that there are a lot of Canadian students will stop at the high school level or the first undergraduate level, and you've put the finger on the wound there in a sense. How do we get those students to continue studying at postgraduate level? Response. Well, that's an absolutely crucial issue you've just broached. Continuity of science and research requires new blood, new talent across Canada. And also, we need folks from abroad to settle here in Canada. So we need to instill this taste and desire among our youth to pursue graduate studies. And our university, in its mission statement, focuses on this. We work hand in hand with cégeps, colleges, schools, high schools to imbue in our youth a desire not only to do undergraduate studies, but masters and doctorates. And we have our tentacles across a number of regions in Quebec. We're a great opportunity of this approach. Question. Well, there is a substantial pool in the National Capital Region, the Laurentians, Saint-Jérôme, for example. You have a small university which in Ripon, which is in the very heart of my riding. That's a sub-branch. My universities are your universities and vice versa. I went to one of your universities. But will your diversity enable you to recruit from abroad? And if so, to what extent? Response. Well, we are the youngest university in the Université du Québec network. We have 6,000 students. We're a burgeoning university, and these students are located in Gatineau and Saint-Jérôme. The research centre on the forest sciences in Ripon is primarily for master's and doctoral studies, and there's a lot of research conducted on forests. We have about 500 foreign students, international students, and our students come from all walks of life and all locations. Some who study in Saint-Jérôme come from Montreal. And diversity is key. Thank you very much. I have 30 seconds left. You've touched on an important point. Universities that teach agriculture and rural studies. Do you have any research ties with what's happening in the rural areas? We absolutely do. Could you give us a quick example in 15, 20 seconds of any research you've undertaken in that realm? Well, rural studies are important when it comes to forestry management, for example. And we work hand in hand with the municipalities in forestry management to ensure the good stewardship of forests in a sustainable and ecological manner. Sorry to cut you off, Dr. Nantel and Dr. Singh. I had about 5 questions to ask each of you, but I've run out of time.
Thank you so much, Monsieur Lauzon. I know the interest you have, and the witnesses were so grateful. It's really interesting testimony. And now if we could go to Monsieur Blanchet-Jonca, 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. From the outset, I'd like to say hello to my colleagues, but also all the witnesses before us this evening. I'd like to start with Mr. Nantel. In your opening remarks, you mentioned that Canada was competitive in basic fundamental research. That piqued my curiosity. Could you elaborate on that a tad, please? Well, thank you very much. It's been quite some time that I haven't delved into basic research per se, but there are major developments and endeavours underway, such as Triumph in BC and the Neutral Observatory in Ontario, there are a number of major facilities in Canada that have made discoveries of world import. For example, the Nobel Prize won by Donald Strickland recently. Canada punches above its weight when it comes to basic research. There's not a decade that goes by that we don't win at least one or two Nobel Prizes as Canadians. I don't have the exact data right here, but Canada is ranked high when it comes to basic research. And what I want to emphasize is that when it comes to commercializing discoveries, in terms of GDP and jobs that are created, that's where we have more difficulty. And that's the point that I wanted to make. Colleges can help in that part of the equation. We need better involvement of colleges in research in Canada. That will help us check that box. Question: what are the characteristics that would ensure that Canada, or that make Canada effective on the world stage, in your opinion? Response: I gave you two examples through the chair, of course, in my opening remarks. The Canadian Foundation for Innovation was transformative. I had my personal experience of this. I've seen to the extent just how we have been able to upgrade institutions across Canada and also in colleges. There are also the Canada Research Chairs, which increasingly are becoming egalitarian, to some extent thanks to our committee chair here with us. She was Minister of Science at the time. So those two programs, among others, have helped to bring Canada up to the top-ranking countries. Dr. Nantel, you mentioned another important point about fundamental research. Madame Roxane Silva appeared before one of our House of Commons committees and talked about the importance of basic research and that we needed to focus more on applied research. Funding is, of course, the crux of the matter and the lack thereof. You're aware of the data, so am I. Canada is the only Canada in the G7 that between 2000 and 2020 reduced its funding of R&D. So I'm trying to get a handle of the point you're making. We're competitive, and I'm glad about that, but could we be even more competitive and stand out on the world stage if we did have the necessary funding? Well, obviously. The answer is obviously. Thanks for stating the obvious. But my friends from the University of Quebec and Saskatchewan, I'm sure, would agree that we need an additional injection of funding at a high level in terms of pure science and applied sciences. We'd be outperforming ourselves if we were to see that kind of funding. Now, there's been a focus increasingly on applied sciences over the past 2 decades. But I think the government needs to bring the fruits of this pure research to Canadians and show them that it gives us jobs, economic development, and that's the crux of the matter. We can always do better. We don't want to put a spanner in anyone's works. We're counting on you to encourage us. How much time do I have left, Madam Chair?
Merci beaucoup. C'est bien.
Well, thank you. Let me proceed. Our other witness, Mr. Zaim, it's a pleasure to have you with us this evening. Right off the bat, let me congratulate you. You have the new challenge of Vice Rector since last month, and I've taken a look at your profession roadmap and your career path. It's very remarkable and impressive. Thank you for sharing your international experience with us. I know you've contributed to a number of Francophone organizations through your endeavors. So here's what I want to know. Is it still possible in Canada and on the world stage to conduct scientific studies in French and publish them in French? Response. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. If I may, through you, yes, it is still possible. It's difficult. It's tough. One can still study in French. It's a tad more difficult to publish in French. But that begs the question, publish what, for whom, and why. If you're publishing to become a Nobel Prize winner, you probably need to publish in a language like English. If you're publishing with a view to get informed as a scientific decision maker, well, then you should publish in your own native tongue. I think it's in our interest to all be polyglots. Our French is key. It's fundamental. We're going to continue to publish in French. It's a bit more difficult. We need assistance to conduct more research in French and to publish more broadly in French. We teach in French. We have Canadian institutions that teach in both official languages. And my experience when I've travelled abroad is when it comes to graduate studies, Canada is often talked about as a country where one can study in many languages.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zaim. Thank you very much to the member for your important questions, very important questions.
And now we will go to Mr. Cannings for 6 minutes, please.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to start with Dr. Singh. You mentioned the national research facilities, 17 across the country. I think you said 3 at the University of Saskatchewan. But you said there was a struggle for ongoing funding. I just wondered if you could expand on that, how those facilities are funded and what role your university plays in the funding of those facilities and why there's a struggle. Just if you could expand on that.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I can respond to that question. So, for example, currently at University of Saskatchewan, we have Vaccine and Infectious Disease Organization that developed Canada's first COVID vaccine, and my colleague, Professor Volker Gertz, did appear in front of this committee. We also house Canada's only synchrotron facility called Canadian Light Source. These facilities are funded through a mechanism which is within Canada CFI, and these are called MSI, Major Science Infrastructure Funding Competitions. Every 5 to 6 years, there's a competition and an external international review panel comes to visit these facilities. For example, in the current round of MSI funding, we projected the operational cost of both of these national facilities for the next 5 to 6 years. And because of the tight budgets, we were encouraged to look at a 15% reduction in the operating budget of the facilities, which is quite challenging. What we believe is the reason for that is the current funding model, which my colleague from Niagara College talked about, CFI, has served us very well for last more than 20 years to allow equipment for individual researchers and creation of the larger facilities. So, Madam Chair, what we are proposing is that we need a different funding model that looks at a large facility. Whenever Canada decides to build a major science facility, from the day the shovel goes into the ground, over the life cycle, which may be 20, 30, 40 years, we should be able to project the cost of operating that facility and make a decision as to how we are going to fund it between the federal and the provincial jurisdictions. The second layer of complexity is the partnership money that we need to secure as universities from the provincial and other entities to complement the funding that would come from the federal government. That creates a patchwork of a funding model which is not very conducive to operating these large national facilities. These facilities, Madam Chair, are also used by hundreds of international researchers who come to Canada, thereby creating prominence for the Canadian science at a global stage. Therefore, the adequate and a newer funding model for these facilities is something that we need. And we have a first-hand experience at University of Saskatchewan because we operate these 3 national facilities for Canadian science. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Singh. I'd like to turn back to Dr. Nantel. I have 2 post-secondary facilities in my riding, Okanagan College and Selkirk College. Both, small to good-sized colleges, but they operate on that college model that you talked about. where research is not paramount. It's operated in a more applied way. You talked about the College and Community Innovation Fund, 2% of our Tri-Council budget, and yet you listed off all the, it sounded like very successful programs that are done with that funding. And I'm just wondering if you could maybe expand on that. I mean, we have at Okanagan College, we have a sustainable building program that would be so useful for, the green infrastructure we need for the future. In Selkirk College, we have Metal Tech Alley and other things around the tech smelter that deal with advanced metal science. I'm just wondering if you could maybe expand on your ideas of how we can improve this to make it work better, whether this model of how colleges do research could be better.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, it's the college applied research at colleges is relatively recent. It's something that maybe is 20 years. At Niagara College, we've been doing it for 23 years, but we were one of the first to actually receive funding from the government to help us work in collaboration with companies to do applied research. Universities have been doing it for centuries, but colleges is relatively new. And when we started in the late 90s, early 2000s, there were few colleges who actually were ready to tackle this type of work. But now, and in great thanks to the NSERC CCI program, we now have, I think the last I saw was 90% of the 140 colleges across Canada that do conduct applied research, that are building their research office infrastructure. I mentioned earlier, when I was at the University of Toronto as an adjunct professor, I wrote my own grants, hired my own students, ran my own budgets. I was a principal investigator. I did it all myself. At the college, because the faculty is there to teach and to do a little bit of curriculum development, it's the research office that has to do all that work. Once a company identifies us and wants our help, and we help them define the project and we get funding for it, then we assemble a team around the needs of the company. And that's when we release faculty from teaching to work on the project. That's where we hire the students who are going to work with us. And it's a model that works pretty well, honestly. I think right now, with the 20 years that we take in building ourselves up, the funding that could help.
Dr. Nantel, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Mr. Cannings, thank you for your questions. It's just really interesting testimony. We're now going to go to the second round, and we will go to Mr. Williams for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for everyone for being here. I'm going to continue with Dr. Nantel, so not to worry. I have a college also in my riding in Bay of Quinte, Loyalist College, and I know the challenges, and thank you for answering a lot of the questions I already had in the beginning. I'm going to talk, under your leadership, Niagara College has been successful partnering with businesses to develop and commercialize innovation, and you spoke about a little bit of that at the beginning. What kinds of tips or best practices would you share with other post-secondary institutions that they can copy?
Well, we're in competition. I can't give all my secrets, Madam Chair, but through the chair, I think what makes a lot of sense is to understand how college applied research does work, and to focus it on the needs of the companies in your region and the education of the students. I think we have what we often call the trifecta of success. You have a company with a need, students who need to be educated, and faculty or staff expert who can work together with them and solve the problems. The one thing I did when I first came to Niagara College was to focus on the areas that were important to our region. In Niagara region, you have food and beverage, you have agriculture, and we have those, and manufacturing. And so I focused on those. So all of a sudden, we weren't madly off in all directions. We actually focused on what was important to our region and the programs that we offer at the college, because the students we hire on projects have to come from somewhere. So they have to come from the programs that we have. So that's one thing. then I would recommend going for stability. And that's very important. Doing one project at a time with one little grant at a time is really tiring. And it's hard to get momentum going. And so with NSERC and your regional development agency, in your case, FedDev Ontario, there is a way to actually get multi-year funding to access, to bring together the funding when the industry partner needs you. If I have to write a grant proposal every time, it's a 6-month process. And that's not the speed of business. I like to work at the speed of business. So if I can have umbrella funding that I can deploy whenever a project is judged worthy of undertaking, then that really helps. So long-term funding in area 1 of your expertise, area 2, potentially area 3. It might take 3 or 5 years to get that to happen, but that's another way. And then once you have envelope funding and repeatable success that way, you build an infrastructure that can actually get more grants, find more companies, educate more students, and you need a certain critical mass. And so Jeremy at Loyalist will, I'm sure, get that done. He's a great colleague of mine.
Yeah, he is. He's a great guy. Second question, how are you engaging the industry? What best practices do you have to engage the industry in the Niagara region?
Thank you for this, and through the chair.
Yes.
Sorry, it's like I go to municipal meetings too sometimes. Many different ways. We have a good website that is known in Niagara, and I sit on several boards. We have our staff on industry association boards. We go to industry association meetings. We make sure that we display our expertise and our equipment. Sometimes we even have press releases, obviously, when we have new funding or new equipment that we want to showcase. We have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have LinkedIn, we have Instagram. We try to reach people where they will try to reach us. And often it's the companies who call us, because we're lucky, and a little bit your case also is in the Niagara Peninsula, there are 2 institutions. There's Brock University and Niagara College. And Brock University is just starting to get an engineering school. So whenever a company wants manufacturing done, research and manufacturing, they call us. So it's a question of making ourselves known out there actively, but also to be receptive to incoming calls, because you'll have some of those. And for that, you need to build your infrastructure and being able to take those calls.
Okay, last quick question. You're the rare example of a Canadian researcher who left Canada for the US, but actually came back home. So what do you think needs to be done to keep our science researchers and innovators here in Canada?
What got me back is when I got the impression that Canada was serious about research, that they wanted to invest in our facilities, in our experts, and that's what got me back. My first grant at the college also was CFI. So to me, it shows a dedication by the country. We had a Ministry of Science. That was a great thing. And I'd like to see it back, honestly. It sends a strong message.
Thank you very much, sir. Madam Chair, I think I'm at my end.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nantel. Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. It's really interesting testimony, and we're so grateful for everybody's time. We'll now go to Ms. Bradford for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. It certainly is a very interesting discussion this evening. So, Dr. Nantel, we know that there's a worldwide shortage of semiconductors, and it's really putting a crimp on the automotive sector and pretty much every manufacturing that involves tech at all. So I know that you've introduced the photonics program at the Welland campus of Niagara College. Can you elaborate on the importance of photonics towards the development and manufacturing of semiconductors? Do you think that, Canada's well positioned to be able to produce these at home, so we're not, held hostage to waiting on the Asian market to provide these for us?
Wow, through the chair, that's a big question. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm a laser expert, and so I had a chance to, in the early 2000s, establish 2 programs in photonics, one at Algonquin College in Ottawa and one at Niagara College, that were to cover various aspects of lasers, optics, and photonics that are important for Canada. It's not just telecommunication, even though at the time it was all we read in the news, optical fiber telecommunication, but Lasers and optics apply to lighting, to cameras, to biophotonics, so medical applications. It's a lot easier to point to something with photonics in it than it is to point for something that doesn't have any. My cell phone, there's an AMOLED screen, that's photonics. So from a point of view of semiconductors, what I know of semiconductor production is that they employ very, very strong UV lights and optics to reproduce patterns we want to put on the silicon in a very, very, very small area. And so we do have fabrication facilities in Canada. We have one in Bromont, I believe, in Quebec. There is a center called the Communications Research Center that I think used to get better funding, but could use some more. Somewhere around Kingston, I think it is, but it works with institutions across Canada that is about designing circuitry and making them happen on silicon. We do have some good research facilities in Canada. It's a question of having production facilities. When it comes to making hundreds of thousands of circuits and stamping them out and putting them into millions of cars, what you need is more than just research facilities. You actually need industrial facilities that will take the research of our great Canadian universities and colleges and put them into actual practice in Canada. So this sometimes takes a little longer. I'm afraid that I can't go too much more in details as it's not my exact area of expertise, semiconductor production, but I hope I answered part of your question.
Thank you. So I'm very familiar with Conestoga College, of course, because it's located in my riding, and I know they do an awful lot of industrial research and partnerships, perhaps a competitor of yours. But I'm very fascinated with your food and beverage. So you've got the breweries. I think you started with the winery and now the distillery. Last time I was down there, greenhouses were kind of looking, I think, perhaps marijuana research. So you've got the whole suite. So I just wondered, are those in partnerships with private industry at all, or do you have your own brands?
Yes and yes. First of all, Conestoga is, rest assured through the chair, Conestoga is a partner of us. They're a member of the Southern Ontario Network for Advanced Manufacturing Innovation. So they receive funding through us from FedDev and doing great things. Every project we do is in concert with a company. There's not one that we do just for the curiosity of a staff or a faculty. And so everything we do, there's a company involved because eventually we want that company to take the result of the research and commercialize it. In the case of our products, our wine, our beer, our distillates, those are made by students in their courses, and it's our own brand. And that's part of the academic side of the house, not so much the research side. We do research in beverage. I mentioned the Distillax example with the zero gin, and we do a whole bunch of other research on beer and wine, but these products that we sell are actually part of our academic delivery. And us having stores on campus is partly to give students the real world experience of having to take their product from the vine all the way to the cash register. But it's also a way of making sure that we improve our brand in the region, and we recoup a little bit of the cost of these fairly expensive programs.
It's very unique, and thank you. I know my time's up.
Thank you, Ms. Bradford. Thank you to all our witnesses. And we can get in two last, we'll hear from Monsieur Blanchet-Jonca for 2.5 minutes, and then for Mr. Cannings for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Mr. Elzim, I'd like to come back to you again. I'd like us to delve deeper into the issue of the study and publication in the French language. You said that Canada is recognized for its polyglot nature and that it was possible to study in French. I'd like to understand the rationale behind that. I spoke with the Canadian Association of the Network of Professors and Teachers, and the data is quite striking. The most recent data from the Research Chair of Research of Canada concerning publication in French is 0.5%. of scientific publications by Quebec researchers in international reviews, and that goes back to 2014. So you can imagine it's perhaps dropped further since then. And when you look at natural sciences and medical sciences, it's about 10%. And since 1990, there's been a drop of approximately 15%. So I want to just double check with you, is the government making it possible to use French in publications and also studies in science and research? Response. Well, through you, Madam Chairperson, the problem with publishing in French is unfortunately a long-term problem going back a long way. It's difficult to do worse than zero. We have -0 temperatures, but not when in terms of numbers of publications. I wasn't saying that most things are published in French, far from it. We need the government to help universities and publishing houses to further promote the open source publication of articles in French, and also not only encourage but require the publication in Canada's 2 official languages. Now, when researchers wish to publish to go to the United States, like Mr. Nantel did, well, the Americans don't learn French. They don't speak French. And I'm kind of torn between my love for the French language, my dedication to the French language, and the reality of the markets. But our government can help in this regard, and our universities do help, and we work hand in hand with all international organizations to ensure the promotion of French. We teach in French, and we do publish in French, but indeed, there are areas where all the work is done in French, but when it comes time to publish the findings, it's all done in English. Sorry, Doctor, to cut you off.
We'll go to Mr. Cannings for a quick 2.5 minutes, please, and then to be our second panel.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm going to turn back to Dr. Nantel again, and I would love to talk about wine and cannabis because they're both huge parts of the economy in my riding. But instead, I'm just going to come back to this little issue around funding and money. A few years ago, you wrote in an editorial that none of the great results college applied research achieves across the country could happen without the work of the research offices, and yet they're run on inadequate resources. And I'm just wondering if you could, I know you've touched on this several times here this evening, but if you could maybe take a couple of minutes to expand on that and what we need to do as a federal government to help colleges do this good work.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, the university system has this great program called the Research Support Fund, and it helps universities fund their research offices and endeavors. Generally, for every dollar they get from the Tri-Council, they get 40 cents on top, free, without applying much of a proposal, to run their research office, commercialization office, technology transfer office, and this type of thing. Colleges do not get that. We don't have it. Some grants, we can take up to 20% of the grant envelope and put towards these types of expenses. But a lot of them are just project costs, grants that pay only project costs. So I've got to run projects and I have no support to run the office who gets the projects, takes the company through the process, helps commercialize the thing after the project is realized. That's what I mean. That's what I meant a few years ago in that op-ed, is that we run on steam here, on the change in the sofa. Colleges are funded by the province to deliver academic delivery, to deliver students in graduate society. The research endeavor has to be a little bit more self-sustaining. And it's hard for a college administration to say, I'm going to put X amount of money in the research office so that they can do that great other stuff. We need better funding, like the Research Support Fund, to support our offices. And like I mentioned, We write the grants. We do the industry partner thing. We hire the students. All that's done by the professors at universities.
Dr. Nantel.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Cannings. We'd like to thank all our witnesses. We're grateful for your time, your expertise, and it was a really good conversation. We thank you. We will temporarily suspend before we go to our second panel, but it's my understanding that we will be losing Mr. Baldinelli. We'd like to thank you for being a wonderful member, and we welcome Ms. Gladue. Suspended. I'd like to welcome you all back for our second panel tonight, and I'd like to welcome all our witnesses. We are delighted to have you this evening. From the Government of Quebec, we have Dr. Remy Quirion, the Chief Scientist. From Synchronex, we have Marie Gagné, the Chief Executive Officer. And from the University of British Columbia, we have Dr. Gail Murphy, who's the Vice President, Research and Innovation. We welcome you all. We'd like to hear statements from you all. Each of you will be given 5 minutes. When there's 30 seconds left, I will hold a yellow card. And with that, we will go over to Dr. Quirion for 5 minutes. Bienvenue.
Oui, bienvenue.
Welcome, and thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I'm delighted to see you again and to be here with you this evening. This is an issue that we care a lot about, research and science in Canada. This is a subject that has been close to my heart for over 40 years, first as a researcher and for over 10 years as Chief Scientist of Quebec and recently as President of INGSA, International Network for Government Science Advice, that has roots in over 30 countries. I'll cover 4 themes: basic research, talent, scientific literacy, misinformation, and our democracies, and finally, Canadian science and innovation ecosystem. The COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated the importance of science in addressing major societal challenges, whether it be pandemics, floods, cyber attacks. We need fundamental basic research on climate change, Where would we be today if we didn't have access to the messenger RNA vaccines? Perhaps they are expensive, but if we didn't have them, where would our economy stand at and our society? And that was developed thanks to long-term investments of over 30 years in basic research. It always pays off, basic research, even though it can take time. In Canada, in 2001, we had 2.5%, a peak in investment in R&D, which went in 2017 to 4%, and now in 2020 it's dropped again. So we're a far cry from the major leagues. The average of the OECD countries devoted the equivalent of 2.5% of their GDP to R&D in 2019, and a dozen countries invest 3% and more. Finland, just a small country, has announced that it will spend 4% of GDP in research and innovation. Surely we can do likewise here in Canada. But what we can see is there's an increasing gap between Canada and many other OECD countries. Canada should aim to be competitive on the world stage in terms of innovation and science. Over 5 years ago, the Naylor Committee, of which I was co-author, and the chairperson spearheaded it, recommended major reinvestments in basic research.
Fondamentale dans les trois conseils subventionnaires canadiens.
Since then, various studies have estimated the requisite investment in science to be over $1 billion per year. 1.2 billion ballpark. So we're talking about a significant amount of money if we want to be competitive on the world stage. Good news. The government's recent commitment to support 1,000 more research chairs to attract and retrain the best and brightest talent in the country from all corners of the world. That's a step in the right direction to do research here, but they'll need grants. And that will mean more pressure across the network. Currently, there are 2 grant applications accepted out of 10. So 8, in other words, are rejected because of a lack of funding from our granting councils. Also important, labour. We have a labour shortage across Canada, whether it be at a college level or at a university level. We need ways of convincing our youth, both here in Canada and across the world, to come to Canada to get training in research and in innovation. Our training, scholarships and bursaries are just not competitive enough. About $17,000 for the master's level, $25,000 per year at the doctoral level for studies of or bursaries of excellence. This is a pittance compared to a number of European countries. It was barely more competitive before the pandemic and will be even less post-pandemic. The competition in mental health. Brains are gold, and that is the Canada of tomorrow. Brains. We need the best brains in the world to undertake research to develop social innovation and new products, to promote careers in science. No one can be left behind. All the principles of equity, diversity and inclusion. We've made strides, we've made progress, but still more remains to be done. Moreover, scientific literacy and culture from an early age, as early as primary school, secondary school, colleges, university. That's one of the best ways. Sorry, Dr. Carignan. Dr. Carignan, I'm really sorry to cut you off, but unfortunately, your time has run out. No worries.
So people will have questions for you. Thank you so much for your presentation. Maintenant, je vous passe la parole à...
Now, we turn to the next witness, Marie Gagné, for 5 minutes, please. Who knows the College Centres for Technology Transfer? Please raise your hands if you are aware of their existence. Unfortunately, I can't see many hands raised. That's normal, but it's also a sad state of affairs. SMEs, which are the drivers of the CCTs, they are few and far between. Madam Chairperson, I'd be pleased to introduce myself now. I'm CEO of Synchronix. We are a network of CCTTs in Quebec. Let's come back to the core question. What is a CCTT? These are centres of research and innovation affiliated with colleges. The clients are SMEs and organisations. The objective of the CCTTs is to respond to a crying need so that they can commercialise new products, new procedures, new processes. SMEs don't want to do the research. It seems like the CCTTs don't want to either. They want to solve problems, develop new products to be more competitive, more inclusive, more environmentally friendly, and applied research is the tool they use to achieve this. Let me give you two examples. The first, CCTT in the Laurentians, which works with Autobus Lyon, developing the first school bus that is entirely electric, which allows Autobus Lyon to position itself as a North American leader. Another CCTT, the electrochemicals, environmental studies in Mauricie. For the past 25 years, it's been developing probiotics so that Bioca, a company, remains a leader in the field and distributes its products in Canada, the United States, Germany, and China. Why the CCTTs? The first CCTT saw the light of day 40 years ago for the benefit of Bombardier in the lower St. Lawrence Valley in Quebec. To set itself apart, Bombardier needed specialists in applied research to help them to develop new products and new processes. The collaboration worked so well that since then, 58 CCTTs saw the light of day. Now, the 2,000 experts at the CCTTs work annually with 6,000 companies and businesses on thousands and thousands of innovative products. They tried and they're achieving it. 50% of the budgets come from clients, 30% from the Government of Quebec, and 20% from the Federal Government of Canada. Each CCTT is specialised in a specific area, localised. Its mandate is also to deal with the needs of the region. For example, civil security, aerospace, artificial intelligence, telecommunications, clean energy, agriculture, the food economy, meteorology, integrating immigrants, disabled persons, gerontology, and so on and so forth. The CCTTs participate directly in creating a more innovative labour force. A labour force that is more aware of the latest cutting-edge technologies and innovations. Applied research is just as necessary as basic research. We need to strike a balance between these two types of research to ensure that we have the know-how which turns into collective wealth. The quality of life of Canadians should increase Canada's competition on the world stage. That should be our aim. We need to tailor our technology to build a more sustainable Canada that is more respectful of its diversity and its history. Colleges and CCTTs, through applied research and their proximity to the regions in their sector, have an important strategic role to play. 95% of Canadians live fewer than 50 kilometres from a college. The CCTTs are favoured locations for SMEs to innovate and also for the communities to address societal needs. The CCTT model has had such a major impact on socioeconomics that in 2010, the National Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada sought to create similar centres affiliated with colleges and universities across Canada. These are called Technology Access Centres, CATS. It's crucial to increase the funding available, the core funding, to NSERC for applied research by colleges. A minimum of funding, a modicum of funding required by the NSERCs. And each CCTT needs recurring funding of $350,000. I'm sorry to cut you off, Ms. Gagné. I truly am sorry.
To have you, we thank you for your perspective. And because I've introduced everyone at the beginning, we will now go to Dr. Gail Murphy for 5 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for inviting me to join you today, and I thank the members for taking on this important work. I'm Gail Murphy. I'm Vice President of Research and Innovation and a Professor of Computer Science at the University of British Columbia. I'm also the co-founder of TaskTop Technologies, an enterprise software company headquartered in Vancouver with over 200 employees. I am grateful and privileged to be joining you today from the beautiful, traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam people. I'll begin with a very brief introduction of UBC and its research enterprise. UBC is the second largest university in Canada with nearly 70,000 students and more than 17,000 faculty and staff at our large campuses in Vancouver and Kelowna, and at research and learning sites throughout BC. The university is consistently ranked among the top 50 in the world, with particular strengths in innovation and research commercialization. UBC researchers attract over $700 million in funding each year, the second most in Canada, and are responsible for tremendous contributions to knowledge, technology, public policy, economic growth, and social progress. Many of the themes you've discussed at this committee resonate with me in my roles as a Vice President of Research, a professor, and as a tech entrepreneur. I've been watching closely as countries around the world are making ambitious new investments in science and research, recognizing the benefits of more highly skilled workforces and how advanced research helps fuel competitiveness and growth, not to mention the importance that research provides to tackling pressing issues like pandemics and climate change. Thanks to investments from successive governments and actions taken in recent federal budgets, Canada has positioned itself well. But as a number of my colleagues have highlighted, we now risk being left behind if we're not able to continue to attract and retain top talent while other countries accelerate and intensify their investments. Support for Canada's research enterprise is ultimately an investment in developing Canadian talent and the expertise of our people. Exposure to and engagement with research and the scientific process is a critical experience that equips individuals to be innovators throughout their lives and their careers. When done right, the resulting skills help advance knowledge, develop new technologies and solutions, and equip people with a readiness to try the new and re-examine conventional wisdom. Equipping Canadians, and especially our youth, with these competencies is particularly important for our country as we tackle the great challenges of our time, from meeting climate and environmental targets to building an inclusive, green, and innovative economy and enhancing the health and wellness of Canadians and our communities. For example, through the Stuart Blesson Quantum Matter Institute at UBC, faculty, students, and staff are engaged in initiatives that build interest in quantum science and encourage participation from diverse groups of students. This has included K-12 outreach, undergraduate scholarships, mentorship programs, and all of these have a special attention on reaching students with identities that are currently underrepresented in the sciences, including Indigenous peoples, women and girls, and people of color. The Institute has engaged over 3,500 students in the past 5 years. Another example is my own experience building a Canadian tech company. The knowledge on which we built the company came from NSERC-funded research that enabled us to think broadly about problems facing software developers, while NSERC further supported our early stage formation through the Idea to Innovation program. Continued innovation at the company was fueled in part by industrial undergraduate research grants. My two other co-founders in TaskTop include a PhD student from UBC and a master's student from the University of Victoria. Our first hires were graduate students from UBC, and the company has been fueled by a steady stream of talent from Canadian institutions. While I echo calls for funding levels that ensure Canada's core research granting programs remain globally competitive, I would also like to bring closer attention to programs that support students and make opportunities to pursue advanced study more accessible. Funding amounts for graduate student scholarships, for example, have not changed in nearly 2 decades, which in inflation-adjusted terms means a 35% decline. At the same time, Canada ranks 28th in the OECD in graduate degree attainment. As we seek to improve access to opportunity and support diversity, increases in the number and the value of these awards are critical. We also need to expand undergraduate student participation in advanced research. Earlier and deeper experience in research will help our students develop their curiosity and talents, which will serve them and Canadian society very well as they pursue their careers. I hope the committee finds these contributions to its study helpful, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you and address any questions you may have.
Dr. Murphy, thank you. And on behalf of the committee, we'd like to thank you all again, Dr. Quirion, Ms. Gagné, and Dr. Murphy. You have an interested group in this committee, and we will now go for the first round of questioning. It will be for 6 minutes, and we will begin with Mr. Tucker.
Thank you kindly, Chair, and thank you for all our witnesses here today. It is an honor to be with the knowledge and intelligence that is on display with the presentations. We're very blessed by that. Dr. Murphy, I'd like to start with you. You touched on a little bit of the pandemic and what some of the challenges is, that brought, but even more urgent and more timely right now is the tension in Eastern Europe. And I was wondering what your thoughts on what is the potential impact on research and what could possibly happen with some of the siloing effects of the tensions in Eastern Europe and what that might mean for research here in Canada. Is there any comments on the potential drawbacks, or maybe even the potential upside of some of the Ukrainian community coming to Canada? And just get your general thoughts, Dr. Murphy.
Well, thank you for the question. I think we will see a lot of the potential impacts that we saw during the pandemic actually continue. We saw an interruption in the ability of graduate students that might be coming from other locales to come to our country and be able to pursue their studies here. We saw a lack of an ability to collaborate internationally in some jurisdictions, a lack of access to large research facilities in some cases, et cetera. So I don't have any data at hand with respect to what we might be accessing in countries close to where the conflict is currently occurring. But with these kinds of conflicts, I think it does cause all of our researchers concerns about travel, about interactions, about their graduate students. And there is a lot of effects for our researchers who have family that are embroiled in the conflict. And that has a significant effect on individuals' ability to think creatively, to undertake the deep thought that can be involved in their research, and is something that is on all of our minds to make sure that we're supporting our colleagues through these very difficult times.
Are there any state software companies, Russian state software companies that would kind of raise flags if you would see them associated with any research in Canada?
Nothing that comes off the top of my mind. There are a number of individuals in different parts of the world that contribute to open source software, and that might be an area in which there needs to be more thought.
You've talked a little bit about how some of the funding levels haven't been kept up with inflation and some of the changes that are with the crisis, with the pandemic and whatnot. Is there things that we can do better to isolate or ensure that the research continues with future crises? Because a little bit of what the last 2 years have taught us is expect the unexpected. And is there ways that we can be proactive, thinking on how we can protect the research and that's done in Canada?
Well, I would like to thank the Government of Canada that during the pandemic, there was specific supports provided to the research environment in which we were able to continue to fund, especially graduate students, postdocs, as well as start up research infrastructure again after the pandemic allowed institutions to begin to open a little bit more. I think ensuring that there is some long-term fundamental base funding that allows us to keep our large infrastructure running, whether it's at a university or a college or it's at a government lab, is really important, because many of these kinds of facilities you cannot just turn off and then start again. You really need to keep things flowing at a regular basis, and we need to ensure that our youth really are continually engaged in these endeavors. So being able to ensure that they have access to funding for student summer programs, that they have access to ensuring that if they start a master's program, that they can finish that program, that they'll have that funding, is really important to enable to engage them, to allow them to increase their skills in a time where we know that this is all about having advanced technology to in part deal with a crisis, whether it's conflict, whether it is the climate, whether it's the pandemic. The ways that we're finding out of how to get out of these situations are often through advanced technologies, but they also have to come with that social science lens of research to it. Things like understanding how to get over vaccine effectiveness or hesitancy, yes, in terms of understanding how we can, with conflicts, understand the history of those regions so that actions that we might consider taking are informed by what has happened in the past.
Yeah, history doesn't often repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And I'm a big believer in learning from past rights and wrongs of the humankind that's out there. And I think we're seeing a little bit on that, unfortunately, in Eastern Europe. Just quickly on the resilient question, I think I'm almost out of time, but what else can we do for the resilience factor of our research facilities? Just the general.
So, in general, in particular, many of the facilities are working on that 5 or 6 year flow of funding that you've heard about. And often that's not enough time. If you're talking about a particle accelerator or you're talking about a synchrotron, you really need to be able to plan 10, 20 years ahead to make sure that you have things in the right state.
Thank you so kindly.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tucker. Appreciate your questions. And with that, we will now go to Mr. Collins for 6 minutes, please.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to all the witnesses here this evening. My first question through you, Madam Chair, will be to Dr. Quirion, and it's along the line, or it's addressing, I think, one of his last statements about scientific literacy and the importance of. And my question would be that almost from the start of the pandemic, the joint efforts of all levels of government, municipal, provincial, and federal, were challenged and in some cases undermined by misinformation on social media or in other places. I've been an elected official for working on 27 years now, and in all that time, I welcome opinions that differ from my own. I like my opinions and my comments and thoughts to be challenged by others, and so feedback from my constituents has always been very important to me. But through the pandemic, I heard some very disturbing comments, whether it was through the election process or even through the last couple of weeks here in Ottawa with some of the events that we recently had to deal with. And, comments like, well, you're listening to the wrong doctors, or you have the wrong information that you're using as a government to address the pandemic. And so there seems to be a real resistance to science, and whether it's the use of masks or the importance of vaccinations. And it really those comments stand in the way of us getting to back to some sense of normalcy. And so I guess my question would be, what can the federal government do as it relates to making investments or policy changes that combats misinformation? And how do we appropriately respond to a shift in attitudes that question the validity of scientific evidence, and in some cases, the scientists who are helping us through the pandemic? So through you, to, Madam Chair, if I could ask that to Dr. Quirion.
Thank you very much for the question. It's a big one, and of course there is no easy answer. I think overall we have challenged over the past couple of years with the pandemic, and of course science was very much at the forefront in the press every day. A lot of scientists in the press, so much more visible. And sometimes there is a contrary type of argument. Of course, we knew nothing at the beginning about that virus, the behavior of the virus, how to develop vaccine drugs that will diminish the effect of the pandemic. So back and forth with little information, and maybe the public, general public, start to say, what is that? So I think what we have to do now, and do that much better, so at the level of federal government, for example, the council, the three federal council, to support research, to support explanation on the scientific methods. So basically to have citizens involved in research project, what we call often citizen science or participatory science. So, and there for me, it's not the result of the day that's important. It's more the process of science, so that everyone understands a bit more how you build science one little piece at a time. So I think that's critical. Another critical aspect, and of course there it will be working very closely with the province, is education. Education about general education, key, but also education in science from the primary school. You start simple, but the principle of science, you interest the young generation kids about science. They are bright. They are very curious. So I think we need to make sure that we foster that more and more in the future. Very strong collaboration between federal government, provincial government, cities, to make sure that you put science there, that you explain science to kids, you explain science to citizens. In addition to that, and what happened, for example, in Ottawa over the past few weeks, having on board, and I think Gail mentioned that, social scientists. So to be able to understand a little bit how society, how our democracy evolve with time. Mm-hmm. Because there is some danger. I'm a bit anxious about that for the past couple of years now. What we see with social media goes so quick, and you can rally people from all over the world on a very bad piece of information. So I think we have to make sure that social scientists are at the table with, for example, expert in public health, expert in virology, if we talk about pandemic, but also in climate change. How do we make sure, how do we explain to our citizens that climate change is very important, and what does it mean for me on my street and for my family? Otherwise, it's too abstract. So we have to change the way we do it as scientists as well.
Thank you, Dr. Kirion. And I don't have much time left, Madam Chair, but if I could ask Dr. Murphy very quickly, do you have any advice on how the government can get more women involved in science and research, and what progress has been made and what needs to be done? And I know I only have about 30 seconds left or less. Thank you.
Well, very quickly, I think we are all making progress across the country, and the Dimensions project that was introduced is helping us think through it to actually do the background research within our own institutions about what are the barriers that keep individuals from entering into research. And often it's getting people involved in paid ways as opposed to asking them to start through volunteering and other efforts, and making sure they have opportunities that they see in the future.
Thank you so much, Mr. Collins, for your questions and good discussion tonight. I think we all really appreciate this. Monsieur Blanchet-Joncat, pour 6 minutes.
6 minutes, please, sir. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. If I could just say hello formally to the witnesses this evening. I'd like to start with you, Mr. Kirion. It's a pleasure to see you here this evening. Mr. Kirion, in the wake of the Naylor report that you know all too well, that you co-authored with the chairperson, I'd like to know, based on your analysis, what Canada has done since the Naylor report has been published. How has Canada positioned itself and what should be its science and research priorities? Response. Thank you very much for your question. Yeah, I'm very proud to having taken part in the drafting of that report. After all, it's an important report when it comes to science and technology in Canada. There are a number of recommendations that were responded to. For example, the creation to a position similar to mine in Quebec, a chief scientist in Canada, Mona Lemaire, who works closely with me. She's an excellent colleague, so that's a plus. And there's been more interaction between the three federal councils, research programs that have led to the creation of multidisciplinary teams, research in human sciences, in the humanities, in engineering. All the principles of equity, diversity, inclusion has made a lot of headway, but we're still facing significant challenges, as I said in my opening remarks, when it comes to support for basic research. We've lost percentage points vis-à-vis other countries in the world, for example, France, Germany, the US, and also smaller countries such as Finland. So we have our work cut out for us there. Now, also, in terms of our ecosystem, it's been 40 years that I've been working in this field in Quebec and in Canada. And even for me, who's been, in fact, living this for the past 40 years, getting funding for research and innovation is complicated. It's a bit like a puzzle. I don't mean the English meaning of a puzzle, but something that is really quite a pain in the neck. You receive the puzzle, you open the box, you see there's far too many pieces to the puzzle. You say to yourself, well, some pieces must be missing. In Canada, we've added a lot of pieces to the puzzle, but often in silos. And it's high time, in the wake of the Naylor report, that we strike a small task force of experts who'd be mandated to see what raft of recommendations we need to simplify our ecosystem in research and development in Canada, and perhaps a standing committee could be struck to make recommendations in the long term. Maybe it could become a standing committee that would monitor things scientifically and technology for Canada going forward. That's still something that's lacking. Nick, thank you very much, Dr. Quirignon. Ms. Gagné, thank you for your attendance this evening, and thanks for explaining what CCTTs are. Here's my question. Given how specific they are they understood, properly understood by the federal government and its granting bodies? And how is it reflected in its funding structure? Is there project-by-project funding for the CCTTs? Is that adequate? Response. Well, thank you very much for your question. Are the CCTTs properly understood by the governments? No, they're misunderstood and underfunded. I think we have a lot of work ahead of us in terms of funding. As I explained earlier, college research is self-funded primarily. And if we want to maintain our capacity, our infrastructure, our critical mass, we need both core funding and project-by-project funding. The more core funding we have, the more project-by-project funding we'll need. This applied research is necessary, it's useful, it helps our Canadian economic fabric, Quebec economic fabric, which is made up of over 80% of SMEs. We need to help them more to innovate, and this can be achieved via applied research through the colleges, which are services in proximity. The colleges are underknown, if I could coin that phrase, the CCTTs as well, but a lot has been modelled on the Quebec model and drawn its inspiration from it. I think it's high time that we see this take root across all regions and all ridings in Canada. Thank you very much, Ms. Gagné. Concerning support for research, there are indirect costs to research. Does the federal government provide enough funding to overheads when it comes to research? And what bearing does that have on your research activities in your organisation? Response: indirect costs for research are not recognised by the college system. The indirect cost of research allows these organisations to maintain their infrastructure, maintain quality research in terms of intellectual property. These overheads are not borne through the project funding. The Quebec government, the ministries of the economy and graduate teaching, we conducted a study. Ms. Gagné, I'm so sorry to cut you off. We've run out of time for your answer.
Monsieur Blanchet-Jonca,
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Chairperson, is it possible to get a written answer from Ms. Gagné to that question? Is it possible to get a written answer that we can share with members of the committee?
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And now we will go to Mr. Cannings for 6 minutes. To you, please.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank the witnesses again. And I'm going to start with Dr. Murphy. It's nice to have someone from UBC here, my alma mater, and not only that, I worked there for 17 years in the Department of Zoology. I have a lot of fond memories of that, but it was a long time ago, and so things, I'm sure, have changed. And I just want to ask, you seem to be an ideal person to ask about innovation, the sort of fundamental research piece, and then the innovation that can and should follow from that in many cases. I know my friend Peter Cullis has been in the news with regards to the mRNA vaccines and the basic research he did. I don't know if that research was, the innovation for the vaccines was developed there, or if any development like that happened. But I'm just wondering how much of that kind of innovation goes on at UBC now or any big university, and how important it is to the university and the researchers.
Thank you for that question. Clearly, a lot of this kind of research goes on, and thank you for mentioning Dr. Cullis's work, who obviously developed the liquid nanoparticle coating for the mRNA vaccines. Dr. Cullis would be the first one to tell you that it is built on 40 years of research funded by the Government of Canada. And that was fundamental basic research when it began, and over the years, as they started to see different kinds of applications, it became somewhat more applied, and then moved out into an industry startup to further develop it. That's one story that's similar of many stories at UBC that have gone from basic research within the lab to actually changing the course of a particular industry sector. Another example would be Carl Hansen's work on antibodies for various different kinds of diseases, including SARS-CoV-2. And he has taken that out in terms of a startup that is now $1 billion company named Accelera. And I could go on and on with those stories. I think what's important with them is they started from curiosity-based, investigator-led research that was fundamental. No one saw those particular uses when these individuals were trying out things that people had never thought about doing. And then through many years, they were able to take it forward, start to work with different kinds of partners and investigate how things could be applied. So one of the hard things to understand about the research landscape is that we do need that whole spectrum. It's an ecosystem approach to really get through to the innovation capabilities. And that's not only at the universities, it's our college partners who are producing talented individuals that can help run the manufacturing plants or do the biomanufacturing, et cetera. It's our people in art and design colleges that can help interpret descriptions of research results to provide to families with autistic children. So I think what we have to look at is the entire ecosystem that helps feed into innovation and recognize that we need to fund different parts of this overall ecosystem and pipeline.
Well, thank you. And you also mentioned you really emphasized, I think, how important it is to support students in all this. And you mentioned that scholarship and bursary funding has been stagnant for 20 years, I think. I've heard that from student groups that I've met with. And I'm just wondering, does it seem to you that perhaps we've forgotten that really basic foundation of science and have been distracted by the sort of shiny new things that are happening at the other end of the spectrum, and how important it is to get those scholarships and bursaries up so that students stay in Canada. I've talked to students who've gone to the United States because that's where they can get a scholarship that they can live on.
Yes, thank you for that question. And I will speak to this question partly from having been a federally government funded student who went to the US to do my PhD and came back. I was also a federally funded undergraduate student in research who first of all went to industry before going back to graduate school. And I think what's important is really enabling our youth to follow those questions that they might have thought about when they were younger, and they suddenly get into an institution where they have an opportunity to follow some of those questions. It's not that they will necessarily become the Nobel laureate, but they will become individuals who think about problems critically, who have an opportunity to understand how to take various sources of information, trade them off against each other, and understand what might be actual reality in the information they're being presented with, and to really take that forward into industry, into not-for-profits, into government service, and to use that questioning mind that they've developed through these research projects to help further our entire society. So I think it all starts at the beginning. I think Dr. Carrion mentioned going into primary schools. That kind of funding of outreach to schools, our science facilities, our museums, are all ways to ignite in our youth, who are our future of Canada, that opportunity to know that we can learn new things and we can take those into actually changing the course of how people live and work. I think we have lost sight of the need to start that pipeline and fund our students.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cannings. Thank you to all our witnesses. And now we're going to go into our second round. These are 5 minutes. And we're going to start with our new member. We welcome you, Ms. Gladue. 5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. I must say, since it is my first time, what an honor it is to be here and to be continuing the work that we began when I was first elected and I worked with the Chair. I was the critic of science, and we were trying to determine what to do to help science in Canada and wanting to see where Canada could lead and how we could maintain that position, where we needed to maintain research and science so that we could support our GDP, and where we really needed to partner globally in order to afford to be able to do some of the open science and larger research. And then to identify some of the barriers that we've talked about tonight in terms of resources, the brain drain, trying to get more women into science and engineering, math. And so I'm going to start out with my first question for Dr. Murphy. You talked about research and the difficulty with commercialization. And I do see that a lot of the research we do in Canada ends up, at the end of the day, being commercialized in another country. What are the barriers? What are the things that we should be doing to try to keep the research that's happening here turning into commercialization here in Canada?
Thank you for that question. One of the important things to do is to make sure all of our researchers have access to knowledge about what intellectual property is. It's not just patents. It can be trade secrets. It can be other forms. And sometimes individuals don't know how they might actually take forward some of the ideas that they have, and that could actually find their way into commercialization streams. So there's a big part to education. There's also a need to ensure that we're connecting the right people within our communities and educating the broad spectrum of people needed to take something from being an idea into being a product. One place where things fall apart a little bit, perhaps in Canada, is that innovation gap that is often spoken about. If you're developing a new chemical process, this might be the funding to do something at scale, but not at production scale. So taking it from what happens at a lab bench into something that is a little bit bigger in some sort of plant that you might be able to try something more at scale. So there's a number of places where we could fund different kinds of infrastructure to help in that translation, but also fund the kinds of people that you need to develop skills that are not just the research side of the skills, but the skills about seeing what the product could be out of that research, doing the product fit, building out the marketing and expertise in terms of running a company. And some of that is just difficult to put all the pieces together within the ecosystem. We're seeing various organizations like the Creative Destruction Labs help in that kind of translation by having mentors available for young project teams to understand what that transition might look like. But there's various items within the ecosystem that we might be able to fund to help more of our research ideas find their way into commercialization.
Very good, thank you. And for Ms. Gagné, I'm very impressed with the 59 different CCTTs. I went online and looked at all of them, and I know NSERC was trying to create something similar. You mentioned the CATs. What are the things that are keeping us from achieving the success that you've had, and how could we accelerate the success that you've had?
In Quebec, the CCTTs are very structured, well organized, complementary, collaborative. And I think we need to do the same thing elsewhere in Canada, so it is no longer just a Quebec network, so it's a pan-Canadian network that is interlinked with the CATs, the CCTTs, and the academic community. Our colleague talked about commercialization. If we want to do more commercialization, we need to build that bridge between basic research and more applied research. It's crucial. We also need to find ways of making the entire ecosystem more fluid and to fund projects that are outside the box. Programs are increasingly complex, pluridisciplinary. It's important to promote a collaborative approach between the various research stakeholders. Clearly, the issue at stake is funding, money. We need to fund that applied research.
Dr. Kirion, are we out of time?
Sorry. And it's your first time.
It's okay. More questions than I have time for.
Well, we're glad you've joined us. And we will go now for 5 minutes to Mr. McKinnon, please. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Ms. Diab, you're going? Sorry, to Ms. Diab for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to ask questions. Thank you so much for all the witnesses that are with us today. Dr. Kirion, j'ai une question pour vous.
I have a question for you, Dr. Kirion. As you said, as you're aware, our committee has already heard testimony from the Chief Scientist of Canada, Dr. Mononima. And as you intimated in your response to my colleague, well, you said you have an excellent relationship with her. So here's my question for you. What's the difference between your role and hers? And to what extent do you work together? Do you share information? I'd like to know a little about that, please. Thank you very much. We share a whole lot of secrets, and I'm not going to divulge them all this evening. No, I'm saying that a bit facetiously. But we have a very good relationship. There is a difference between the two roles. I am both an advisor to the Quebec government in terms of research and innovation. I also chair the granting councils in Quebec, the Quebec research funds, which are analogous to what we have at a federal level, the grant councils. We have basically the same three in Quebec. It's complementary. In Quebec, we support our students through bursaries and scholarships and networks and centres of excellence. Mona doesn't have that mandate, which is a bit of a pity because we have the mandate, the twin mandate, to advise the government, but also an active mandate in terms of programming research. This allows us to put in place ideas and notions or suggestions that we get from the community of researchers or the private sector or the government sector. So that's the difference between our two roles. During the pandemic, we worked in close collaboration together. We didn't know, as I said earlier, what this virus would look like. It was a thorn in our side. We worked a lot in the Quebec government, with Mona, with the grants councils, and also Federal Public Health Department. Thank you very much.
This question was asked, but I'd like to ask it again of you. As a woman on this Science and Research Committee, and as somebody who is trying to understand a bit more and really would like to see a lot more females involved in science and in research. It's tough enough for boys to be in that, let alone females, but or diverse representation and so on. Can you just, from your experience, given the fact that you said that you're the second largest university in Canada, and I come from Nova Scotia, we just reached 1 million people in the population, but I have 10 universities in Nova Scotia, with a Nova Scotia Community College that has 14 campuses. So we're very rich in education. But what I'd like to know from you is, what else can you offer us? How can we get more females or more diverse people involved in research and in science?
Yes, thank you. I think I mentioned the Dimensions program that was started by Madam Chair. That is just in its pilot phase now, and I think it has 17 institutions across the country that are gathering information about what the barriers are. So I think we're going to all be developing practices that can help. The changes that have been made to many of the programs, the changes and attention that have been given to equity, diversity, and inclusion have meant that at UBC, many of the new hires in science are women. I think where we struggle a little bit more is actually in more diverse groups, and more attention is being given to that as well now. But it takes a long time to start changing the faculty complement. So I think if we can start to ensure that our undergraduate populations, which they are very gender balanced in many cases, not every program, but many of the programs have improved. It takes a long time, and where we're seeing the biggest barriers are really for people from diverse cultures and diverse backgrounds that might be first generation university students and aren't necessarily attuned to how you might get involved in research. And that's where I think focused attention could really help ensure that we have the input to the pipeline to enable that over time. They are the leaders in technology, they're the leaders in companies, they're the leaders in academia.
Thank you very much, Dr. Murphy.
Thank you so much, Ms. Diab. Dear colleagues, we've come to the end. I really want to thank all our witnesses. We thank you for your time, your expertise, and the information you've shared with this committee. It will really help as we build the future of science and of Canada. And to our colleagues, if I could borrow 2 minutes of your time, we do have some business to take care of. Thank you to the witnesses, and we say good night to all of you. The clerk has distributed a draft budget for the study of science in Canada. It's in the amount of